On May 13, 2025, China made a move that might look like global development, but it's really something much bigger. During the China and the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC Forum in Beijing, China committed nearly 10 billion in credit lines to Latin American and Caribbean countries, but unlike traditional aid, these lines are not denominated in US dollars, they're in yuan. That detail matters more than the headline. To understand why, we need to look beyond diplomacy. China is using this as a lever, not just to gain favor, but to reshape the mechanics of global trade. Currency is power, and Beijing is no longer content playing in someone else's sandbox. This is a calculated play to internationalize the renminbi and embed its financial system into emerging markets, starting with Latin America. Let's break this down. The CELAC Forum brings together officials from Latin American and Caribbean states with China's leadership. It's a platform for soft diplomacy, trade and investment announcements. And this time the headline number was 10 billion. But the real story is how it's being deployed. These credit lines are meant to fund infrastructure, energy, technology and logistics partnerships, all classic development playbook moves. But every project funded will be priced, settled and repaid in yuan. That means contractors, governments and institutions across the Western Hemisphere will be onboarding into China's currency system, creating dependencies that will last well beyond the loans themselves. This isn't new for China, but the scale and regional focus are accelerating. Over the past decade, China has quietly increased its use of the yuan in cross-border settlements, especially with BRI countries, but this is one of the first times it's extending RMB credit so broadly into Latin America, a region historically aligned with the dollar, and that shift is intentional. By expanding RMB usage globally, China reduces its reliance on the US dollar, insulates itself from sanctions and financial pressure, and gains new levers of influence. Now, what does this have to do with Singapore? A lot more than most realize. As yuan-based finance spreads beyond Asia, Singapore is positioned as the gateway to make it work. Singapore's financial and legal ecosystem is already one of the most RMB-integrated environments outside of China itself. Singapore was one of the first offshore RMB hubs, and its institutions are well versed in RMB clearing, settlement, and fund management. This means Singapore-based firms, from banks to law firms to fintech platforms, are uniquely placed to support the next wave of RMB-denominated trade and finance. Let's look at how this plays out. Imagine a Latin American firm receives one of these credit lines to develop renewable energy infrastructure. They'll need to work with Chinese partners to structure the agreement, comply with regulations, manage FX and report financial flows. Who can help them do that? Singapore-based firms that understand Chinese and international compliance, RMB clearing and legal arbitration. Or imagine a regional development bank that wants to onboard RMB into its lending framework. It will need back-end support, treasury solutions, liquidity management, cross-currency tools, all areas where Singapore excels. And here's the kicker, this doesn't just apply to Latin America. As more of China's outbound investment and credit gets denominated in yuan, every country touched by that system will need a way in. Singapore can be that way in. We've already earned China's trust. Now we need to offer that trust to others. This is the back-end play, the invisible infrastructure that makes the headlines work. And it's not just banks or finance professionals. This impacts legal consultants, digital infrastructure builders, trade and compliance experts, and even tax advisors. If you're in Singapore and working in any cross-border function, the question to ask is, how RMB ready are you? Here's what you should be doing now. First, educate your clients. Most global firms are still operating in dollar-first mode. They don't understand what it means to work in yuan. That creates an edge for professionals who do. Second, upgrade your systems. If you handle FX, payments or contracts, ensure you have pathways for RMB onboarding, custody and reporting. If you don't, build them. Third, partner with Chinese firms. They're going to need trusted intermediaries to facilitate global execution, especially in neutral, credible jurisdictions like Singapore. And fourth, move now. This isn't a wait-and-see moment, it's a first-mover window. Singapore has been riding on reputation. Now we need to ride on readiness, because what China is building isn't short-term. These credit lines will create new infrastructure, new trade routes and new dependencies, all priced in yuan, all secured by relationships and all looking for reliable back-end partners. If you've been watching this play out and wondering where you fit, this is the signal. If you want to stay ahead of the shifts, not just watching headlines but reading the map, we've built a private Telegram group just for that. Drop a comment with IN if you want to join and receive verified updates that show you how to stay at the center of the real economic story and not the noise.